Excellent. Good afternoon, evening for everybody out there. This
Yeah.
is episode 3 for Doctors to You and Earnest Medicine. We are going to make this episode a little bit, free range, trying to keep it light.
Yeah.
Just talk a little bit more about what we're trying to do here, some future topics.
Exactly.
Certainly an opportunity to welcome others to contribute anything that they want us to go through or
Yeah.
products or questions.
Yeah. And there's a little bit on the horizon. We're always kind of looking at what is next. So we'd like to give you a bit of a rundown on what we anticipate happening on the show in the next couple of weeks. We have a few people that we're trying to line up, and we want to get them obviously in the hot seat and chat with them about some of the topics that they are experts in, basically. So sickle cell being one of those, and we're excited to kick it off.
Yeah,
So,
and we really want to bring it so that, it's inclusive. It's not just here for us to talk. It's not for us to bring in experts and,
Right.
we really want it to be digestible. We really want it to be that people are taking away some actionable item in their lives.
Exactly.
That's the point of doing all of this.
because I think you can talk technicalities on this stuff until the sun sets, and you
Yeah.
just you don't connect with people that way all the time.
Yeah.
It depends on who you're talking to, but for the most part, I believe you have to kind of speak to people
Oh, yeah.
in a more understandable way, and everybody wins in that situation.
I mean, that's my role as an advocate for my patients very
Yeah.
often is just translation.
Right.
It's just being able to take what they've been told.
Yeah.
I mean, I took a patient to one of their specialists yesterday, and the patient has dementia. What are you going to do? You're
Yeah.
going to tell them what to do and expect them to remember it 5 minutes later. And then the other part is the whole time he had a problem with his ear, so the whole time was what's going to be done about it,
Right.
And he's in pain. So it's acting as a guide, a navigator, if you will. And it's important that we all to be connected. We have
Yes.
to communicate effectively
Exactly.
in a way that we can appreciate, a different perspective maybe, but collaboration.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a key element, and especially that's something we want to bring into these episodes as we evolve and start to navigate this sort of path forward, is making sure that the people we're bringing in are collaborative in a sense, because it's storytelling is one of those things where it's not one-sided, and if it is, it's probably being done wrong. So you want to have more than one angle and more than one perspective on things.
And it doesn't mean we have to agree,
Exactly, yeah.
There's good discourse,
Yes.
And we're not going to lob bombs at people, but at the same time, it's like, it is called a hot seat. So
Right.
why not let
Just
it get
imagine
hot?
that being the mantra here. We're just going to like roast people on live.
Well, there will be, businesses I'd like to roast.
Oh, God. Yeah.
I just got an email earlier today and a communication about another, healthcare is all about business these days. And
Yeah.
they're all positioning themselves, marketing, coming up with new things. And, after a while, it's just like, the good thing is that we are shifting what we're doing so that we can support Earnest Medicine, and Dr. Hugh is going to help accomplish that.
Yes.
By creation of our nonprofit.
Yeah.
Humans for Healthcare, which is in development. We should have that in next few months.
Yeah.
But that will be a dramatic shift for what I do as a physician.
Yeah.
So that it will be primarily a nonprofit.
Right.
Part of it will be supporting Earnest Medicine, education, training as well. Also providing some limited charity house calls too.
And we have a chat with Catherine. We have these weekly chats lined up with her, and she's kind of the guiding light there, and just trying to keep on that path.
She's a rock
moving
star.
it forward.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the thing. Along this journey, you meet individuals who help position you, advise you, tell you to stop that.
Yes.
And, it's really trying to think of how rich your life can be by those people who support you.
yeah.
And the opposite, when
Right.
you get people who just want to drag you down.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's miserable.
It's draining.
Yeah.
Can be draining. Well, what we're going to do here is we're going to roll our intro and then get into a few topics. One of these topics is the Un-Pac Hunger Strike, again, that was here back in December and made a return, and a group of young people who Dr. Brown cared for while they were here in the city, and exploring, house call doctor. You're able to sort of provide the flexibility within your own time frame and time structure to go out and pursue an opportunity like that. Whereas somebody who's in the clinical setting may never be able to unlock themselves from, the confines,
the old ball and chain
and
of
go out
healthcare.
and do something like that. So if you're watching live, please comment #live. If it's after the fact and you're watching this later, please #replay. But right now we're going to basically play our intro, and then we're going to kick things off and get this party started. So let's roll it. Here's Earnest Medicine, episode number 3.
Okay.
All right, so we're back. We gave a little bit of an introduction about what we want to do here. I wanted to dive in just quickly and talk about a few of the things that we're working on as far as getting people in here to the studio to have these conversations. As many viewers know, or as you should know by this point, midway through February, we're in Black History Month, and D.C. is a city full of individuals who have provided a pathway forward, for many people of color. And I think also it's a city where a lot of legislation has caused issues for minorities for many, many years. So, moving in from a rural sort of place in mid-America, DC has been a breath of fresh air because it's a very eclectic place. It's transient in its nature, but I interact with and see a lot of people that you don't always see in other parts of America. And so as a house call doctor, one of my points of curiosity for your practice has always been, what has it afforded you as far as the ability to care for people who may not always be able to have that solid structure of healthcare in their everyday life?
Well, I'm born and raised here in Washington, D.C., lovingly. It's I call it Chocolate City. That, growing up and as a young child and my love for music, D.C. has been, such an important part of my fabric.
Right.
And I can't even really imagine, outside of D.C. I mean, I travel, I see, and, in Earnest Medicine, we'll be doing more of that.
Yeah.
But for me, this is all I know, right?
Exactly.
And, I would say, that has also guided me as a physician.
Right.
Knowing my communities, knowing the people that I have served and will continue to serve. Where do I find my place in this healthcare spectrum when there's a push to kind of just throwing everybody together, an amalgamation of care that's very chaotic, spotty at best, and you also have to understand the cultural perspectives.
Right.
I went to a historically black college.
Yeah.
Howard University.
Howard University.
HU.
Yeah.
And that was probably the most formative and richest experience I had in education.
Yeah.
Because it was the makeup of my classmates, also the training. You had to get thick skin really quick.
Right.
And I got real thick skin.
Yeah.
But also it afforded me insights into some things that, really others in other academic centers probably don't have as much of a focus on.
Yeah.
And one of those, which we will be speaking this month, is sickle cell disease.
Yeah.
So I would say where I've found my what resonates with me and my patients is the ability to navigate,
Right.
to advocate, to maybe shed light on a problem and a solution.
Yeah.
It is a collaborative effort.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things about healthcare is where a patient is put in a position to just be the patient. No, it's about an active participation.
Right.
If I'm going to, invest or be all in, it's got to come back the same way.
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's challenging because you have to bring people to up from where they are, give them a perspective and give them some tools, whatever works for them.
Right.
And for some people, there is a path to get out of where they are. It's their choice, And at some point, there have certainly been cases where, there was a limit to how much I was able to do. I want to be able to do more, but at the same time, I have to be mindful that this is their journey,
Exactly.
not mine.
Well, that's another point that I think, we had Michael in last week, and he brought that up about his journey through Howard. In his instance, it was a situation where his mom was there.
Yeah.
And so that was a tuition assistance that allowed him to make that decision on a financial basis as well. But he discussed, there are times where it's just the right fit. It's like you felt like, and you made this statement. It was Howard felt right for you. And what made Howard feel like that was the spot that was going to define who you are? Because I don't know if it was. I think your mentor George Thaler, right? Was he Howard based, or was he in another space in DC?
He was in MedStar Washington Hospital Center, but Dr. Dibble was a family physician at Howard, and he was really the first example that I had of a physician, and just legendary in terms of him as a physician, but tagging along and understanding that when he interacted with his patients, he was interacting with the generations. Not just, it was fascinating. And that's what led me to, really look at family medicine seriously. Yeah. Because it is that breadth that, and it's the legacy of his career as a physician. He's retired now, but, you bring up his name and people's face lights up.
Yeah, they know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And then whereas I have some patients like, I don't know who my doctor is, and I maybe had 10 minutes and they were on the computer the whole time. Like even yesterday with the patient I took to the clinic, half the visit the physician was on the computer just typing away. Yep. And that's where it starts. And relationships aren't. I know technology and everything. I'm getting older, but at the same time, there needs to be a personal connection.
Yeah, and I think, and it's not my experience, but it's the experience of my mom, who's been in and out of the doctor's offices nonstop for the last 10, 15 years. And it's one of those situations where I don't know if she registers this. I think she does, but it's been, one doctor to the next. It might be a great experience, and it largely is based on the communication that she experiences with these people. She's been in plenty of offices where it was just the report that was being filled out, and there really wasn't a lot of face-to-face. I think there have been doctors that she's seen for years and years and years, and over that time you're able to build that rapport a little bit better. But when it's more or less like a one-off and you still are experiencing that sort of lack of communication or that lack of connection, that's, I think, well, from a patient perspective, it can be like you're sort of invisible in some ways. Yeah.
I mean, that's the frustration I've always had with clinic. It was an artificial environment. I couldn't really assess, because the assessment of a patient isn't just with the problem that they have. Yeah. It is to really dig in deep and understand the bigger picture for it. Right. There's so many different things that you would see in one house call that you just would never see in a clinic for one reason or another. You also have to think where the patient's coming from. Right. Trust is extremely important.
Huge.
And without the opportunity to establish trust, then it's just factory work. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's, another piece, bringing it back to the conversation that we had with Michael. As I continued to edit that piece, there were elements of that I didn't actually realize, like, the Tuskegee experiments, things where in the Black community especially, they had these things happen to them as a culture, in a sense, that sowed a deep distrust in medical professionals, where it came to Henrietta Lacks, right? Genetic information that has basically made millions of dollars for a lot of these other companies, and none of her ancestors, none of her family, nobody associated with her probably saw a penny off of any of that data or research. So, yeah. And that's the trust, I think.
It should be mind-blowing for people. I mean, it's I can understand why there would be mistrust, particularly in Southeast DC. You will have these organizations that are very eager to get into Southeast DC to understand the population, to do their research. Yeah. It may sound, everything that they're trying to do may sound wonderful, but their execution of it, I wouldn't trust it. Yeah. I'd be like, no, I'm not going to participate. Right. And, that creates further of a divide. Yeah. Unfortunately, but I think you need to get out of the way that you think about things and explore a new perspective. And that's why we want to go to other places and really try to bring viewers in that to really fully appreciate the differences we have. But the differences don't separate us. There is an opportunity for us to kind of find some commonality. Some, we breathe the same air.
Right. Right.
And Southeast is really where I cut my teeth.
That's what I was just going to bring up. Yeah, because that's where you got your start.
Yep, and that's where low socioeconomic area of the city. I got mugged there once before. I'd actually been held captive once before.
Yeah.
So but stories,
right?
And those things happen. But
yeah.
If anything, they gave me a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, that's a perspective I'm curious about, because I wrote this in the description for anybody who has read that YouTube description. DC is a city of contradictions in a lot of ways. We have, a mile and a half away, the Capitol Dome. The White House is just down the road for the most part. It's like these are the most powerful figures. Sometimes you might say this in the world. There are lawmakers who are wealthy in some regard, but make big decisions that affect a lot of people. And then you go right across the bridge and you have folks who are the recipients of like either poor legislation or poor health care, and they're the individuals also who suffer the direct result of poor lawmaking. Yeah. And so it's this stratification and this divide that is especially highlighted in a place like DC. And that's where I'm curious, because you've had the opportunity to not only care for charity cases and lower socioeconomic sort of situations, but also people who are on the other end of the spectrum. So you've seen a lot, and when it comes to that breadth of experience.
Oh, yeah.
So what kind of appreciation have you taken away from those kind of experiences?
So I would say the first thing is I just shut up and listen. Yeah, that's probably the most important thing. Is you can come with your own preconceptions, you can come with your own background, your own baggage, if you will.
Right.
I've got plenty of that. But but then if you just stop for a moment and just observe and listen, and I will tell you this because when I was in Southeast, when I first started, I used to give calls to the patients who I'd never met before to let them know I'm coming.
Right.
And when I did that, I don't, come off as a physician. I come off as a person.
Yeah.
And in Maryland, we are kind of a southern state, so we have a little bit of a southern drawl. So I would tell them I'd have a few patients, and I'd say, let me give them a call, tell them I'm coming, and I'd talk to them, and they say, great, we'll look forward to seeing you, and I'd come out, and they'd be like, you're white.
Wait a second.
Wait. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You didn't, I thought you were going to be black.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, my name's Dr. Brown, but, I'm here to help.
Earnest, yeah.
And it did take, I would say, several months, actually, and it was consistently interacting with the patient, but more importantly, the families.
Yes.
That over time, the stories grew from there. And that's the richness of it. And that's where I knew this has to be what I do.
Yeah.
And we do that for anyone.
Right.
Doesn't matter where you come from, what your beliefs are, or what your socioeconomic status is. The stories just, I had, when I was in Southeast DC, I used to drive this old Cherokee Jeep. And it was,
it's a little different mileage than the electric car, right? Like slightly.
And it was heat of summer.
Yeah.
Gas was like $4.25. And I was just bleeding money in gas. And then it was, and it broke down.
Right.
So I was on Martin Luther King Avenue in Southeast. Broke down. It was 102 degrees out. I was actually supposed to go and do house calls and then go to a meeting.
Yeah. And 102 in DC is like you're sweating because it's not just dry heat.
It is muggy.
Yeah.
And my car broke down on Martin Luther King Avenue. I just got out of the car. I was just like, I'm screwed. And then I'm just sitting there for, not too long. But then I hear this, hey, Dr. Brown, from across the street.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, somebody knows my name. I thought it was somebody from clinic. Maybe they knew me.
Right.
And I looked around and I was like, oh, they're 4 thuggish looking boys.
Oh no.
and when they were like, hey, and I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
And they're like, what's wrong? And it's like, a car broke down. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, you took care of my grandma.
Oh, really?
And I was like,
Yeah.
huh. And I was like, yeah, let's help you out. And so they pushed the car to
Yeah.
the gas station, and
Yeah.
but that little piece showed to me that there is an opportunity to connect with people, and,
Right.
and share things, to understand that you're there. When I first went out,
Yeah.
I worked for a nonprofit that required that I wear a suit.
Oh, yeah. I can't even.
And I was wearing a suit in Southeast, and I get pulled over by the cops because the cops were like,
Yeah.
what drug are you here for? And I was like, wait a minute, no. And then I got mugged.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm not wearing, I'm not carrying around
Right.
a doctor's bag and wear a suit. So I ended up wearing scrubs. And
Well, I mean, in that instance, I think it's like you're not able to connect with people in that. I mean, when I go out,
I would have mugged me.
Yeah.
I would have mugged me. Shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on. You have to be aware of the environment that you're in, And being born and raised in DC, I know that environment.
Yeah.
And getting other people to tell me, and when I already know, it's
Right.
like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing too about DC is the ability, or especially given that you are a house call doctor and you're seeing people, you're all over the city. Could be at one corner at one instance and in a totally different scenario the next. The ability to be adaptable to your environment super important too. And when I look at you, I think of a very functional guy. Like you've adjusted your life to be as functional as possible in pretty much every regard, which has allowed you to find a lot of success, I think. And that adaptation element is something that I don't think a lot of other, well, I won't say that other physicians in clinical settings couldn't adopt that mindset, but I think it's something that also has been ingrained for so long, either through their educational process or the early years of their practice, that stepping outside of that would just be like an anxiety attack or something for them.
Because, you have to hustle.
Yeah.
And I think if anything's worth it, then you're going to hustle for it.
Right.
If you don't have that motivation or that drive, then, maybe you should be thinking about something else. Yeah. And I'll say, I am used to the hustle.
Yeah.
It is constantly having to think in a situation.
Right.
Snap just like that.
Yeah.
Got to figure out a plan, how to adapt to it. And, I'm 53, so still have enough energy to be able to pivot if I need to.
You've learned the tricks, I think, that you need to learn too. Like I see that from an outside perspective also as a business owner, and thinking about like, oh, that's a smart strategy. Like how can I reformat or think about that
I wouldn't
concept?
say mine's smart. Mine's just like, how do I stay afloat? I would say, and this is where I have to think about also where I'm at in my position in life, and kind of where things are going. That's another reason for why we are capturing these things and the stories and the connections is, what am I leaving behind? What am I passing on?
Right.
Who will be in this seat after, that to me is much more significant than what I can accomplish myself.
Right.
It's what we together can work on and explore. So I'm very curious to see, and experience what others, especially in this format, where this takes us.
Yeah.
Yeah. We will be moving to where we are nonprofit supported.
Yes.
Which is very exciting.
That is exciting. I mean, I know it's in its early phases and it's a work in progress, but that has so many doors opening.
Because look, this is not, even, like last week I got this little flyer that said, "Oh, sell your practice," and this is your,
right.
And I was like, there's no practice to sell.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, and in the capacity that I work, it's, it's not a business.
Right.
It's a passion for it.
Yeah.
So that's why, and, I learn little things, but more importantly, people support me on this journey too, and they pay it back.
Yes.
And that helps me to decide, okay, we need to move in this direction.
Right.
And creating humans for healthcare is like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Because, I'm not going to be here forever.
Yeah.
If I'm going to pass it on, I'm not going to sell it.
Right.
I'm just going to pass it on.
Yeah.
And then whoever wants to take it,
Go for it.
go for it. Hustle.
Well, I think there's so much to dive into also on the ideas of business ownership and how that translates into the medical space, because I mean, that's a conversation for another time and a whole other can of worms, but you've made it you've done it successfully. And I think that says something not just about the methods with which you've approached it, but who you are. I think it takes a special kind of person to really pursue that path and pull it off. But at the same time, I think that there are structures within the medical system that don't, as you've said many times, allow people to really pursue that route without a lot of anxiety, a lot of burden, and really just a failure point at some way along that road that just deters them. And it's, being bought out by insurance or whatever, whatever the case may be. But, re-educating people a little bit and sharing these kind of stories, I think getting people in the mindset that there is another way. You just have to, you might need to look for it a little bit harder and push a little harder, but that there's something there.
Yeah.
So
there is. You just have to, put in the sweat.
Yeah.
To
sweat equity.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we have a little presentation that I'm going to pull up onto the screen here. It's from the Un-Pac Hunger Strike, and this was a little interview we did right out in front of the White House. Didn't get any shit for it, which I was really happy about.
Yeah.
I was every time in like a public park, somebody always comes up. I'm just like,
you have all this gear, but you didn't have that much gear.
no,
so
it was pretty minimal.
Yeah.
But it's it's always just from a photographer or filmmaker's perspective, anybody watching who is in that boat, you're just like, please just leave me alone. Like, I'm not doing anything to you.
Yeah.
Just leave
Well,
me alone.
we're gonna face that wherever,
yeah.
wherever we go. It's
Of course.
natural, but yeah, particularly in front of the White House and in recent years, it's been more
Yeah.
problematic.
Yeah. I think that we've done a pretty decent job of being discreet in the way that we film, and it's worked to our advantage. We filmed in some pretty interesting spots.
So I can give you some backstory to this. So this was in December.
Yep.
I had word of mouth, and so somebody had given my information to an organizer.
Yeah.
For this group, and
Well, how does that happen, right? So, like, you're one of the only house call docs in the city, but if something like that were to come back again, you're kind of on a list in that scenario, or you're first to call, or how does that process work?
As a business, in a business sense, it
Yeah.
it doesn't fit into kind of like a solid plan.
Right.
It is somebody knows and says, oh, well, you need medical services or you need
Exactly.
care.
Yeah, okay.
There's this doctor who does that, and he does it in a way that may work for you.
Okay.
And in this particular case, this was at the Hilton, Capitol Hilton on 16th Street, strategically located right across from the White House. And there is a staff member in a hotel provided some information and then leave it up to the guest to decide.
Yeah.
And so they had reached out and given a call.
Right.
And, I'm always eager to talk to people. I'm always curious about, and so somebody had given a call and was saying, look, we're going to be in DC for about a week, and we have some students who are going to be going on a hunger strike. And
Right.
we really need somebody to help. And my first reaction was, yeah, because back in the day, in the 80s, that was, Reagan era, right? So there was a lot of protest. And, and so that was, and this is DC.
Yeah.
And, I haven't heard of hunger strikes from this age group before. So I was like, let's see what this looks like.
Right.
And just started, it's like, I'd be happy to help. And they were very organized, phenomenal group.
Yeah.
Very mission oriented, got everything that they needed to get done. And I just was there to make sure they stayed healthy throughout it.
Yeah. And you made this reference a few times whenever you were caring for them. You had mentioned that when you had participated on your own hunger strike, didn't really take very many precautionary measures as you started move into it. So I mean,
they were much more prepared than I was back in the day.
What did you do in your own experience that didn't lead to that great of a success rate?
You quickly realize how your energy just drops.
Yeah.
I mean, you really, I mean, and it doesn't take long.
Right.
There's the there's the craving, there's the mental aspect, the mental fog, but oh man, you just get hit.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And all you want to, and so, for these hunger strikers, we had to make sure that we gave them enough fluids, enough, to be able to sustain themselves, so that, they didn't get dehydrated, but then
Right.
also safety precautions. So they actually were smart enough to have gotten wheelchairs.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
wheeling out there.
and luckily they did have some occasions where when I was monitoring, blood
Yeah.
pressures would drop, and
Oh, yeah.
so, and watching them
Little
as they were
stumble, little faint.
watching them as they progressed through it, and what was even more appealing was to see each participant and understand a little bit more about their story,
Right.
and that's what I was doing the whole time. I was there to observe and
Yes.
bring it all in,
Yeah.
wow, how did you, what made you think about, and it was just fascinating.
Yeah.
So the whole week I was just like, this is great.
Cool.
And, I'd go in the morning and
Yeah.
I'd make sure everybody's okay so that then they could go out
Right.
and protest in front of the White House.
Yeah.
And then I'd zip around on my scooter just
Yep.
for fun, just to check on them, just to give them some,
Come
go
back.
get it.
Yeah. Just flying by the
yeah.
White House, just like, you
Yeah.
got this.
Yeah. And it was great.
Yeah.
And it was sad when they left,
Right.
But they've been still very active,
Yeah.
and we were able to capture 2 of the participants, one participant, one organizer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And their efforts are proving themselves. And I would
Yeah.
hope that this would be to show that, if you have a cause, if you organize yourself well, then there's nothing, to stop you. There'll be plenty of opportunities, and you'll get a lot of naysayers, and they're certainly on social media, and you see these people kind of digging at them,
Right.
lobbing bombs, but it's like, just keep moving.
Yeah. Well, I think we've got a clip here, and what we'll do is actually bring this up onto the screen for viewers, and at some point in the very near future, I will basically put this on our YouTube channel so people can watch this, uncut, don't have to worry about seeing our faces over it.
Yeah.
But basically, this is from the hunger strike, and we met up with 2 of their organizers and just had a pretty candid conversation about their efforts and their goals and what they expected out of the whole experience, and also what they experienced while working with Dr. Brown. So let's just give it a watch here.
Everyone here in Washington, D.C. Obviously, we have the White House right behind us, and it's a lovely winter day, sunny, but certainly if you see me wearing this, it's chilly out. So we're here, we're actually with 2 participants of a group of hunger strikers through an organization called Un-Pac, and I'm going to let them talk a little bit more about what they're doing, but also what I've been trying to do to support them during the hunger strike, and get viewers to get a sense of what is it actually like to go through a hunger strike. And then,
And this was
the
cold.
idea that we can get more
It was
people
cold
to
out
kind
there.
of join the movement
I'm wearing my
and
blue-
understand that it's safe and it's powerful in its message.
My name is Jocelyn Garcia. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, and I am the co-founder of the organization.
So I don't know if she came in from
Un-Pac, and
Arizona or
currently
if she was
serve as
Maryland-based.
the national organizing
California.
director.
Well, that's where
And
she was
the
originally
reason why
from,
we are
right?
Participating
think she
in a
was still
hunger
coming
strike
from
today.
Oh,
is
really?
day 15.
Oh, wow.
Is because we are trying to pressure the Senate and President Joe Biden, who is behind us, to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, which is an extremely important bill to ensure that our democracy is working for people like us here.
Excellent.
My name is Kyla Frank. I'm 23 years old. I'm a recent graduate of Virginia State University.
So closer
I joined
for her.
Un-Pac back
Yeah.
in March. I serve as a national organizing manager. And I joined this hunger strike because there's a big problem in this country that needs to be solved urgently. The window to our democracy is quickly closing. All the challenges that Americans face have a direct tie to dark money in politics and a system that doesn't prioritize and protect people's rights to vote. And so we are taking a stand as young people, as a united generation of conservatives, moderates, independents, liberals, and progressives.
And they had quite a bit of
to
traction on
demand
this. I know they were
structural
really
democracy
pushing
reform
on social,
plead
and
with the Biden
it helped that they were
administration to
all
do something
a group
and
of young
act now,
people
because inaction
totally
is not
active
an
on
option.
TikTok. They had you out there TikTok dancing
And you
on a
had
few
plenty of other
occasions.
choices in which to, protest, right? But why did you choose a hunger strike?
So, for the past 9 months since Un-Pac existed, we have been working to try to get the Freedom to Vote Act passed. We have knocked on thousands of doors in West Virginia, specifically over 70,000. We have called our senators thousands of times, sent thousands of emails. We have tried to reach people on social media. We have also met with over 15 Democratic and Republican senators, and none of that seemed to work. And as Kyla was saying, there is massive urgency to get the Freedom to Vote Act passed as soon as possible. And we weren't seeing anything concrete from President Joe Biden or our U.S. senators, while us young people and communities throughout the country were going to have to endure the consequences of a dysfunctional democracy. So we didn't want to take the stakes so high, but not getting this bill passed, the stakes were already high. And so we needed a tactic that showed how much young people are willing to endure, how far are they willing to go to ensure that our democracy is saved.
It's a good tactic.
And a
Kick
hunger
ass.
strike,
They got some attention.
it is
ass.
nonviolent,
Yeah.
it is a moral play, and it is us putting our bodies, putting our lives at risk for a cause that we believe in, and we are willing and have endured that physical, emotional, and mental pain because this is so important, because the consequences of not getting this bill passed will be 100 times more severe than what we have been feeling for these past 15 days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just want to kind of speak on what you just said. Like, this was a very big and huge sacrifice that we had to make as young people. And like Jocelyn said, we did everything our senators told us to do. We called them, we emailed them, we reached out to them, we scheduled meetings. These are all things our senators say, like, do this and we'll listen to you. We'll pass laws
Sure.
that you guys
Yeah,
tell
not
us
a
to
word.
pass. We'll
Yeah.
listen to you. And none of that worked.
They're smart.
And so we
They know
not
that.
only brought this sacrifice, we brought in all these feelings of frustration, all these feelings of like hopelessness into this moment. And
they took
I don't
that.
want to live in a world like this
Yeah.
anymore. I didn't want to be here either. But again, this sacrifice was so important and needed to be made. And it's unfortunate that it had to fall on the backs of us young people when this should have been their jobs. Like, our senators' jobs are to pass legislation and pass things that that is the will of the people.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's hard to have to process all of this because I'm still processing 15 days later.
Yeah.
But again, this was an ultimate sacrifice, not only on our bodies, but also our mental health.
Yeah. You can
So-
see, like, just the energy from those two.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you just magnify it by the rest of them.
Right.
It was just, it was just to be, and I was there for a brief period of time. I wasn't, but they're going to remember everything as this, that they did, everybody who participated for the rest of their lives. And
Yeah.
it is empowering and not feeling helpless, not feeling like you can contribute or do more. It's easy to just kind of throw up your hands and say,
Right.
this is just the way it is.
Yeah.
And, I think most people do. And
Most people do that, yeah. Myself included. I think I'm definitely one that doesn't voice, those kind of opinions as much. And
Yeah.
seeing something like that's motivating. And a part of it also is the community behind it. Because to do or stand like that by yourself, man, that is, most wouldn't, I think, at that point. But the fact that they were able to organize, like you said, such an
Yes.
important part of it, made it such that they were able to, push that extra distance, go that extra step, and then really get the attention of the people who they needed to contact in this instance.
I wish they would come out with a playbook because,
Yeah.
they were just phenomenal. I mean,
Right.
Every possible consideration was made.
Yeah.
Every energy was used in
Yeah.
the right way.
Yeah.
And it's for those to listen and to make a change.
Right. Right.
Because without that, otherwise you just put your head to the ground and just keep moving.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, nothing's ever going to get better.
I think this is a really interesting point, and one that I would love to talk with Michael again about if we're able to get him back into this studio, because he was very straightforward with his statement that basically he doesn't really believe in the ideas of protests or hunger strikes or things like that.
Yeah,
His
he said
approach
that,
was
yeah.
very different, right? He was just like, benevolent capitalism is the way, the channel through which he felt he could make the most change. And he made those statements primarily because the belief, and in many instances, the reality is, money talks. And so if you're able to control that piece on the financial side of things, then you can make the table turn.
Yeah.
And so his efforts, I think, were all directed there, whereas these younger people, obviously, in a different direction. Effective still in its own way. But what they were able to capitalize on in many ways was the most valuable commodity there is in this day and age, which is attention.
Yes.
And so the more attention you have, the more eyes you have looking at you, the better your message will be received. Whether people like it or not, it's going to be there in front of them.
It'll be viewed, yes.
It will be
Yeah,
viewed.
yeah.
And that in today's economy, if you can get eyes, it's just like the Mad Men putting eyes on advertisements, right? It's
Yeah.
just like, if you can get those eyes, you can get the attention you need to make a change.
Oh yeah, and believe me, they got a lot of comments. I'd be just like discouraged, and
Yeah.
they're like, you go, girl. Yeah,
Yes.
they're just, I mean, they just take it and run. And
Right.
It's great to see it.
Yeah. Well, what we'll do is basically we will link that full conversation. It's about 14 or 15 minutes in length. But basically, you can watch Kayla and Jocelyn have a conversation with Earnest in front of the White House, the one and only, and just go over and check it out. There's a little bit more to that video as far as what they go into when it comes to how they felt about you providing that extra assistance when it came to medical care. And again, that's Un-Pac, and you can find them on social. I think they're organizing, and not just in DC. They're after anything, and everything. If it's something that they can approach and try to make a beneficial change for their followers and the people who are affected by these kind of laws and legislation, they're on it. So probably a pretty good cause to follow.
And my father was from West Virginia.
Yeah.
So to see these students in Morgantown, organize themselves,
Right.
My dad would be like, yeah.
Hell yeah.
My dad always had
Go
these
get it.
funny expressions
Yeah.
that, I don't know where he picked them up, but probably from his dad or something like that. But he'd always have these comments like, sometimes you just got to let it burn.
Let it burn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're burning it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Bravo to them.
I think, again, more power to them if they're able to make that kind of change. Those, I think, looking back at my college experience, those are things that I would have liked to have been a little more involved in. I did, service trips for like Habitat for Humanity and things like that. And that was where I put a lot of my efforts, was in those construction sort of related things. But there's so much to get involved in. And if you're feeling like you're left out, just get online, look around. Especially if you're in DC.
Yeah. And it's
there's
finding
something going
any
on.
cause you want to be associated with. I always suggest first you do it yourself.
Yeah.
And then you find like-minded people.
Right.
And you find something that works well, and you work well together.
Yeah.
Then you can hope to accomplish more than you could as the one.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But you also have to be mindful that, there are certain organizations that they operate in a different way, and maybe it doesn't quite jive with you.
Right.
I've gone on medical missions, and, part of the issue is I'm a fiercely independent. And, if I have somebody who's telling me how to do what I do as a physician, I'm just going to do what I do.
Yeah.
And so I suggest that for everybody. Listen to yourself first, find like-minded, see if there's good synergy,
Right.
and do it. If not, keep, if it's something you really are passionate about, you're not going to give it up.
No, it's
and there'll
just
be
innate.
tons of frustration. There will be rejection.
Yeah.
You'll have others questioning why you're doing this.
Right.
It's your time.
Yep.
Do what you think you need to do with it.
Yeah.
It's not anybody else's.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, if they're able to come back, it would be great to see that evolution of their process. Sounds like they did return at one point, but I would say that if they're gung-ho about that cause, and there will be more in in the line of fire when it comes to voter suppression. That's just the way
Oh, yeah.
things are as far as redistricting and trying to get, votes collected in certain parties' favor, so on and so forth. They have a lot of work to do, and they will be back. So as we navigate the next couple weeks in February, we're trying to get a few individuals in here. We mentioned these early on, but just as we close down, we want to reiterate and try and make sure it's on your radar over the course of the next couple weeks. One of them is Dr. Jim Taylor at Howard University, a specialist in sickle cell research. And if you could give people just a little brief sort of who is he to you, and what are your interactions with him on a medical basis or even a friendly basis?
Yeah. So one of my capacities is I provide, my background to certain populations.
Yes.
One population, particularly in the district, is those with intellectual disabilities. And my role is to advocate and make sure that those individuals, and you can understand it, that there, just as is disparities in healthcare delivery to minorities, the same is also a minority, which is intellectual disabilities.
Yeah, very much so.
And my role is to make absolutely sure that these individuals get the standard of care. And I've been involved long enough to have seen the disparities myself. Oh, that patient hasn't, I'm not even going to say the words, but they're challenged, and therefore that's all we can do for them.
Right?
No. That's if that was
Not
your
quite.
son or your daughter, would you be doing? No, you wouldn't be. So let's change this conversation. Work together.
Yeah.
And in that capacity, Jim has come as a tremendous ally. For an individual who has sickle disease and also has intellectual disability.
Yeah.
And we have been collaborating to make sure that he's getting excellent care.
Yeah.
And also helping the family.
Yeah.
Because he's young and there is an opportunity to intervene now so that he can live, a healthy life.
Good, healthy life. Yeah.
And
to have two people like you in their corner, they're fortunate.
I mean, and that's the whole thing. The synergy. Jim and I both have a purpose, and so then we just find out how we operate. He operates a certain way, I operate a certain way, and how can we work together to kind of move things? And it's being dynamic and thinking outside, because none of which is compensated for by healthcare.
Yeah.
But this is it's in your heart. This this is something that we have to do.
Right.
It's not a choice.
Yeah.
And so we'll have an opportunity to bring him in and talk more about that. Particularly, this is Black History Month and sickle cell disease, which is very relevant. Yeah. Even Michael can relate his experiences. And we would also, the president for Howard University, we'd like to get him
that would be
involved as well.
That would be great.
Just to share stories,
right,
and how we can, how we can work together.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a big key. Just the, right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing, the miscommunication, the loss of records.
In this case,
yes.
And if you were to leave this individual up to healthcare, outcomes would
just lost in the system.
It would be a very sad story.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not going down that road.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well,
there I think is so much to dig into on this topic with Jim and so many others. If we can utilize his connections at Howard and your own connections at Howard to also pull the president of Howard currently to talk about that and his own experiences having sickle cell, I think that's like such an important thing. And it goes back to the conversation with Michael too. We'll link that in the description as well. The full interview that we held with Michael on the Howard University campus. Two of his very close friends, young men, 37 and 45, I think he said, if I remember correctly, passed away just like unexpectedly, basically, from sickle cell. And, folks who are basically at the top of their career too, and just out of nowhere, they're gone. Would love to dive in more on that, and especially when it comes to talking about the funding that is allocated toward sickle cell research. And if you watch that interview with Michael again, you can see some of the charts that he was able to create talking about the disparities in funding when it comes to allocating at least some budget toward researching a problem that is really widespread in the African American community. And so those are things that, you know, a lot of people don't know, but worth bringing attention to. So a lot of conversations to have, I think.
Yeah.
And
we'll have opportunities to look at some products, you know.
Yes, yeah.
And we'll be, poke fun at businesses in healthcare,
Yeah.
you know. And
I'm excited for that part.
Yeah. Trust me. Oh my God. Yeah. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Again, if you are watching live, hashtag live. If you're watching on the replay, hashtag replay, please share the podcast with anybody and everybody who you think might benefit from these conversations. Hashtag Earnest Medicine. We're trying to reach people and hear stories from not just practitioners, but patients. We want to share the voice of the people who are most affected by healthcare, both the good and the bad. And it's about just opening these pathways to conversations and dialogue. That's how we move the ball forward on this stuff. So thanks again for tuning in. Episode 3 of Earnest Medicine's podcast is a wrap. We'll be back soon with episode number 4. All right. Have a good night. See you, everybody.